Welcome to another episode of Back to Basics series. I know sometimes doing the simple basic stuff can be frustrating. In this episode, we're gonna cover animating the background and the border of a button and also making the button glow. What we want to do is create a HTML file, and we're also going to create a CSS file. In our HTML file, let's add a bit of code using VS Code shortcuts. Save this file, and we're going to start up the live server. Great. Now we can change the title of the page to buttons. Inside our body tag, we're going to have a div and give it a class name of container. Inside our container, let's have 3 buttons that all share the same class name, button, btn. And for each button, we're going to give it a unique class name. The first one, we're going to give it a class name of glow. The second one, animated border. And the third one, animated bg for background. And we can see they don't have any labels, so let's add some value to the buttons. The last one is going to be animated background. Awesome. So if you say the HTML file, we can see all our buttons, but we need to style them up. First, we're going to link the CSS file. Save that. Inside our CSS, we want to remove any margins from the body. And we're going to set the background color to black. In our container, we're going to set the display to grid, and we're going to place all the items at the center. Obviously, we need to set the minimum height to be 100 VH, which is the full screen. Now that they're all spaced out, let's start by styling the button class. We're going to set the font size to about 1 rem, and we're going to give it a little bit of padding. And we're going to make sure the border is set to none, and a bit of transition for like about 6 seconds. This is for the transition duration actually. And the cursor, we're going to set it to pointer. And we're going to have a background color of like goldish. You can make it whatever you want though. We're going to begin by styling the first button, which is the glowing button. To make it glow, we need to make use of the box shadow property. We're going to have 2 layers, but let's just add 1 layer and see how that looks like. Let's just save this file. We're going to set the color to be goldish, and you can see it's glowing a bit. So if we add another layer, it's going to look even better. And you can add as many layers as you want, by the way. You can practice with it and see what else you can do with it. So obviously we only wanted to glow on hover. Awesome. So we're going to just give it a bit of a border radius, just like that. Okay, let's add some fonts from Google Fonts. We'll just paste the link right here, and we're going to add the font family property to the button, and at least our font looks a bit better. Now for the second button, we want to animate the border. Remember, in our btn class, we set the border to none. We're going to use the pseudo element instead. We're going to use the before pseudo element. First thing we're going to do is set the content, and then we're going to set the position to absolute. We want to set our height to about 2 pixels, because remember, this is going to look like a border, so we don't need it to be that big really. For the width, we're going to create a CSS variable and save its value of the value of the width there, but for now let's just set the width to 100%. And the background color, let's make it white. Obviously that's not where we want it to be. As you can see, it's all over the place, and that's because our button doesn't have its position set to relative. So we're going to do that. Let's set the position of the button to be relative, and once we save that, you can see it looks much different. So what we need to do now is set the bottom to none, to 0 I mean, and the left to 0, and you can see the border is right where we need it to be. It's at the bottom. But in order to animate it, first we're gonna work with our transition, and we're gonna create a variable right here. Let's name it border length, and we give it a value of 0. And inside our hover effect, we're gonna set its value to 100%. So obviously that's not doing the animation that we want. We're going to move the transition down to the pseudo element, and awesome, it's doing exactly what we want it to. Finally, for the animated BG, you can set the background to whatever color you want. I'm just going to leave it as is, and we're going to have two pseudo elements. Set the content and the position to absolute, and the height, let's make it 100%. We're going to create a custom CSS variable, and we're going to name it custom width, and we're going to set that as our width. We're going to set the background color, and obviously that's not what we want it to be. We're going to set the position of the button to relative, just like that. Now let's copy this selector, and we're going to set the top and the left to 0. Awesome. And we're going to do the same thing for the after pseudo element, but instead we're going to set the bottom and the right properties to 0. Awesome. So now we want to set both the pseudo elements to z index 1. Now the button is in front. We can see a little bit of white on the edges, so let's remove the border radius. Perfect. If you set the z index of the button to 0, you'll see the text is on top and the background color of the pseudo elements is just right behind it. In order to animate this, we're going to use the hover effect to change the value of the custom width. To add some transition, we're going to add it in the pseudo elements, about 5 seconds, and there we go, all done. And now our background is fully animated. You can try these examples with many other different colors. Stay tuned for more episodes to come on Back to Basics series.